Trick or treat, everyone. This is Soseztheleadr talking, interrupting your regularly scheduled programming for another excerpt reading. In honor of this, Day of Horrors and the Day of the Dead, I'd like to read from this book, A Halloween Hassle in Alucard Castle. It's from my Sleuths Seven miniseries. I hope you like it. Let's read. This is the scene where Mr. Forrester introduces the Sleuths Seven to their next case. It involves the ghost of Valencia Alucard. I should warn you, there may be some spoilers around ahead, so be warned. Let's read. Roxy watched everyone with interest as she took a seat on the bed to work with her own schoolwork, smiling down at her bloodhound R2, who slept beneath her feet. While she was living here in Melania, Roxy's uncle, King Adamant of Melania, had enrolled her in Melania Community College as a part-time sophomore, and she'd acquired an after-school job after helping Orem at Castle Hill Middle School during the afternoon. But there was a secret she'd been hiding since she'd moved in with the royal family. Roxy was descended from a long line of a race of magical beings named Naturians, the name given to guardians who defend the laws of nature and are able to communicate with animals. However, her powers had developed far beyond any Naturian her age, as she could manifest her powers into a fairy form, clad in a two-piece neon green leotard, complete with matching knee-high boots and large butterfly wings. And because of the achievement she accomplished by becoming a fairy, she graduated to full Naturian guardian at the age of her sweet 16, and because of that, her father declared that she was no longer a child, but was growing up and getting old enough to make her own decisions. And one of her first decisions she'd made was that she wanted to go and live with her cousin and uncle in Melania. Her father, Klaus Norrington, had approved of her decision, but said that she needed to make the money for the trip herself. And after about 2.5 to 3 years later, here she was in Melania. Even though she'd written a letter to her cousin saying that her father had brought her here to prepare for the outside world, she decided to come clean after their first case was solved. And then Luan and Haveria agreed to help Roxy settle down in Melania. It's almost like changing people's lives is what my cousin does best, she thought to herself with a grin as she proofread her latest term paper. And Heather, too, she sighed contentedly. I just hope I can change someone's life in return. Just then, there was a knock at the door, causing everyone sprawled out on the floor to turn and look. And then Heather Winchester said, "I'll get it," and rose from her spot on the floor to answer the door. Standing on the other side was a short but stout man in a sandalwood-colored suit. "Mr. Forrester?" Haveria exclaimed as she recognized this middle-aged man from the Mount Melania Museum. Who is it, Heather?" Luan asked. "It's Mr. Forrester from the museum," Haveria told her as the man stepped in. Haveria knew Franklin Forrester as an acquaintance when she and Luan had gone on a trip to Mount Melania Museum in search of who was a good friend of theirs, Odette, the Swan Princess. And on this note, Haveria found her mind wandering and shut her eyes, remembering Odette. A millennium ago, Odette was imprisoned in a glass pyramid to cut herself off from the rest of the world and her beloved Prince Daniel. She only realized the truth about his betrayal not too long ago, when Havaria's mind melded with her pyramid prison in Mount Melania Museum. After Odette was freed from her prison, she set out to find her beloved, who was reborn in Orem, Havaria's father's foster brother, and the Prince of Lauria. At first, Odette didn't believe Odette's story. Orem didn't believe Odette's story, but then Havaria and Odette's longtime ally, the Fairy Queen, showed him the truth by sending him back in time 1,000 years to see his past life. And to this day, Odette was working in the Lauria marketplace under the tutelage of a wood merchant named Benjamin, a person Havaria knew very well from her early years in the country of the wits. "So what's going on, Mr. Forster?" Luan asked suddenly, piercing Havaria's haze, as the princess sat with the stout man. Havaria and the others sat on their cushions to listen in. "I'd been told by Eden Starling that she'd been helped by you and Miss Winchester, and that you have an amateur detective team formed," Mr. Forster told her. "I need the help of the Sleuths Seven to help me solve a mystery." "What's going on?" Havaria asked. "One of my security guards has suddenly been hospitalized," Mr. Forster began. "He's been slipping in and out of consciousness, but when he is conscious, all he can do is mumble something about an energy vampire." "An energy what?" Roxy suddenly exclaimed. "Energy vampire," Havaria explained. "There have been several experiments around the world regarding the creation of such a synthetic being, but it never came to fruition. And to top it all off, the most expensive diamond in Melania has been stolen," Mr. Forster went on. "The Harlequin?" Luan realized. "Exactly. Mr. Forster replied. "It's supposed to be worth the ultimate fortune. And if we don't find it fast, our greatest contributor to the museum is going to be hugely upset." "Who's your greatest contributor?" Miles asked. "Annalise Benton," he told him. "She donated the Harlequin to us from a Switzerland expedition she'd been on." "I remember reading about Annalise Benton," Ashley realized. "She was said to be richer than most Egyptian pharaohs. So why would anyone want to steal that diamond when Miss Benton would be rich enough to just buy it back?" Luan wondered. "Okay," said Helena. "It seems to me that the jewel theft is somehow related to Miss Benton, but we have to find that missing link in the chain." "Well, let's start with the obvious, the jewel thief," said Havaria. "Mr. Forster, did the injured god happen to mention a name to go along with this vampire?" "I think so," Mr. Forster replied. "He just kept repeating one thing while he was half conscious. The red lens will identify Valencia Alucard." "Alucard?" Roxy echoed with a skeptical look and a wrinkled nose. "That sounds more like a restaurant term than a name." "No, Roxy. The Alucard family were believed to be a race of real vampires," Helena explained. "For centuries they've lived in harmony with humanity until an unknown prejudicial person killed one of their kind," Ashley went on. "Since that day, vampires have been shunned and hunted into extinction until all were none. But rumor has it that one vampire's restless spirit still haunts Alucard Castle, which borders on the edge of the Lauria fishing village," Miles put in. "It's also believed that that vampire's ghost is in Valencia Alucard. And since the day of the death of the Alucard family, once every 100 years during All Hallows Eve, Valencia Alucard returns, seeking revenge for the genocide of her legacy." "Sounds like an awesome legend," Roxy remarked. "And definitely worth looking into, if you catch my drift, Luan," Havaria said with a wink in her elder sister's direction. "I do," Luan responded, returning Havaria's wink. Then she eyed Roxy and said, Roxy, you wake R2 up while Heather and I are ready to royal coach. We don't have much time to solve this mystery. How so? Roxy asked. It's nearly October 31st, the exact tercentennial of the Alucard genocide, Luan told her. If we miss this chance to catch Valencia Alucard, she may disappear with that Harlequin diamond and not come back for another 100 years. Ah, I see your point, Roxy realized. Alright, we're going to have to move fast, and we'll start with Annalise Benton. She eyed Mr. Forrester and asked, Mr. Forrester, do you know where she lives? Yes, said the short, stout man. Ironically, she's bought the Alucard castle and turned it into a hotel. She's planning a huge Samhain soiree. So if you want to gain access to that, you'll have to check in as tourists. No problem, said Luan. We can tell her that we're acquaintances of the La Ria family. That'll work. And I'll pay all expenses. That'll work, Mr. Forrester told her. And I'll pay all expenses. And then he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small gold medallion from his pocket. Be sure to show this to the front desk clerk. It'll give you access to Miss Benton's personal suite. Thanks, Mr. Forrester. Luan told him as she rose from her cushion and accepted the gold coin. Then she eyed the rest of the group and said, Looks like we're off on another adventure, you guys. And to commemorate our coming together as super sleuths, I have something for all of us, Helena suddenly piped up, and led the team toward a rack of red jackets, each one hanging on a hook. These jackets were fire engine red, streaked with black around their waistline and the lines and a matching horizontal chest stripe. The logo of the magnifying glass emblazoned the back of each jacket, and it sported a black number 7 within its circle. There are new club jackets, Helena explained. We each wear one when we're about to go out solving a mystery. Roxy, along with R2, approached the rack, examined the jackets, and realized, These are awesome! But then R2 whined, and Helena consoled him. Oh, don't worry, R2. I have something even more special for you. And then she removed a small red collar from a hook sporting smaller than the coat hooks. This collar sported a gold-plated medallion, each emblazoned with the same logo as the jackets. She slipped this collar over R2's neck and told him, It's a brand new collar. Roxy knelt by R2's side and scratched behind his ear. I figured that since we'll be here for a while, we might as well get adjusted to living in Melania. So my cousin and I got you a new dog license. R2 let out a bark of appreciation and licked his face. Roxy laughed as she said with a voice that rose to an exasperated tone, Okay, all right, okay! Then she exhaled. It's time for us to go. And within moments, the rest of the team had donned their jackets and examined their new wardrobe. Luan fit into her jacket perfectly, while Roxy sported an elegant flare in the back of hers. Helena's jacket was a little snug, while Miles sported a funky bagginess to his. Hilaria's jacket fit her just right. Not too big, not too small. And Ashley's jacket was medium huge, which suited her fine. Then each of the members of the new detective team struck his or her own unique pose, and they all recited a motto chant that Helena had written exclusively for them. Any time, Luan began, and any place, Miles went on. The SS7, Roxy continued, are on the case! The group chorused in unison, each one running a V sign past their eyes. Mr. Forrester just eyed them and smiled. So, as you can see, the Super Sleuths 7 are on another case, and it seems to involve the ghost of Valencia Alucard. Let's continue. This is the scene. This is the scene where Valencia Alucard actually attacks Roxy and drains her energy, while Roxy is giving R2 his normal flea dip. Let's read. Roxy had wasted no time in getting settled into her suite or getting R2 into a mini wash tub that was only big enough to soak a dog. And she was now scrubbing her bloodhound all over with a bath brush, intending to soak every inch of him. R2, I don't understand how you can get so many fleas on your hide, Roxy remarked, as she squirted some pet shampoo into R2's back and then scrubbed him from head to toe with its lathering bubbles. There must be something about pets that make them attract fleas, she found herself thinking. Then she said aloud, lean to the side, R2. I need to wash behind your ears. But meanwhile, as she continued to bathe her bloodhound, a secret compartment slid open just behind Roxy's head, and a pair of unknown eyes watched the twosome from the dark opening. Then, as the unknown set of eyes disappeared from that same opening, its panel slid shut again with a soft thud. After about a few moments of scrubbing, Roxy felt that R2 was clean and helped him out of the wash tub and dried him off. On that note, she heard a knock at the front door to their room. Heather and Luan wouldn't be finished unpacking now, Roxy realized. Just as the knocking grew louder and more impatient, so she decided to answer it as she approached the door with a rant of, "Okay, all right, I'm coming, don't break the door down." She turned the knob and opened the door just a notch, but on that note, she felt a ghostly white hand seize her wrist, and she screamed in pain as she began to glow an eerie green, while that ghostly hand held on and would not let go. "What's happening to me?" Roxy wondered to herself as she felt her vision grow black. "I'm getting weaker." She let out a small inward groan as she told herself, "Dad was right, I should have stayed in Virginia," before everything went completely black. So, as you can see, Valencia Alucard has made her move on one of the super sleuths, and it seems she decided to target Roxy. But why? Well, you're just going to have to read my book to find out. Let's continue. And this scene is where Havaria and Roxy go to see Eden Starling. If you're wondering who Eden Starling is, just read my book, The Case of the Spectre of the Spectre. You'll know who Eden Starling is. Let's read. "Eden Starling," Havaria exclaimed when she saw the young blonde with golden hair in the green room at the Gardenia Theater. "Heather, Roxy!" Eden exclaimed back as she indulged the twosome in a three-way hug. "It's great to see you guys again." Roxy knew Eden very well, as she'd helped the super sleuths solve their first mystery regarding the young actress's disappearance. Since everyone thought Eden Starling was dead after she hadn't been found in the decades since her disappearance, her pride and joy, the Bijou Theater, formerly called the Spectre Theater, due to the ghostly legend behind it, had been shut down and slowly fallen into disrepair. Eden wished to make her big comeback, but now that she was pronounced dead, all her finances were drained, so she had acquired herself a job as the chief librarian in Mamalania Village, while using her vast alchemical knowledge to create several devices that would allow her to mine the mother lode of leftover silver which she'd found in mine tunnels underneath the Spectre Theater. Unfortunately, several authority figures began snooping around when they'd heard strange doings were going on around the abandoned Spectre Theater, and since Eden had discovered that she was pronounced either missing or dead, why not convince everyone of the latter until she was ready to return to the stage? To that end, she also used her alchemical knowledge to transform herself into a makeshift spirit, calling herself the Spectre of the Spectre. However, Roxy had also heard of the story when she and R2 had arrived in Melania, as her bloodhound was experiencing serious ear ringing and had attacked her without warrant. This led Roxy to join forces with her cousin Luan, Heather, and Heather's 3 friends from school. Together they found and calmed R2 and closed the lid on this cold case after finding some clues to their puzzle and fitting them together. "Hello, Eden," Roxy returned as she pulled away from her. "How have you been?" "Just great, and that's exactly how I feel," said Eden. "What can I do for you? What can I do for you guys?" "We need your help," said Roxy as she showed the young actress her rash. Eden drew in a breath as she asked concernedly, "What happened to you, Roxy?" "That's why we came here," Heveria told her. "I found traces of a chemical on Roxy's wrist after she'd said she'd been attacked by an energy vampire." Then she handed Eden her mini microscope and requested, "Could you take a look at this rash through this microscope and see what's going on?" "Sure, okay." "Sure, okay," Eden said in a small voice, and took the pen-shaped microscope from Heveria and eyed Roxy's rash through its eyepiece. It took about a minute or two before Eden started mumbling some unintelligible words, but then she finally concluded, I see what happened." "What is it, Eden?" Roxy asked. "It seems to me that this chemical residue is not a chemical at all," Eden concluded. "That energy vampire is living up to a name, but she's using a rare form of organisms called nucleoprotons." "Nucleoprotons?" Roxy repeated, confused. "Microscopic organisms that absorb energy," said Eden. "And based upon the makeup on this rash, they feed on human plasma, like vampire bats feed on the plasma of small animals." "But where did these nucleoprotons come from?" Heveria asked. "There is a slight possibility," Eden murmured. "My friend Catherine Beadmill was working on a special microorganism that could absorb nutrients from other living organisms. She was trying to find a way to bypass the physiology of human metabolism. She scrapped it when she hit too many dead ends." "Why did she hit so many dead ends?" "Because," she said, "the microbes replicate themselves over time, and soon she found out that her microbes could also take any shape, even any color," Eden replied. "And there's something else." "What?" Roxy asked. "Constant usage of the nucleoprotonic microbes will fluctuate at an inverse ratio directly proportional to the user's physiological makeup and life force, forcing the subject to become solely dependent upon them." "You mean whoever is using these nuclear whatevers will eventually become addicted, like using a drug?" Roxy translated. "Exactly," Eden confirmed. "And apparently, this Valencia Alucard you keep mentioning has found a way to mold those nucleoprotons into glove gauntlets so she'll always have access to them. You need to find her before she hurts herself while trying to hurt others. That's why we came here," Heveria mused. "Is there any way to counteract the effects of these nucleoprotons?" There might be," said Eden. "Catherine did give me a blueprint for some negative quark energy she was able to harness. I've been able to fuse that energy into new glove gauntlets." She opened a drawer under her dressing room mirror and showed the twosome a pair of gloves sewn from chiffon so thin that they were almost see-through. "Here they are," said Eden. All one needs to do is wear these. If that vampire decides to drain your energy with her gauntlets, these gloves will counteract that transfer and declone the microbe's nuclear protonic energy until the subject who's using them will fall into temporary remission. "Thanks a lot, Eden," Varia said as she accepted the gloves. "You've been a big help." Then she eyed Roxy and said, "We'd better get back." So it seems the Super Sleuths now have a weapon they can use against Valencia Alucard's energy-draining gauntlets. But how are they going to use it, and who will use it? Just have to read my book to find out. Let's keep reading. This is a scene where Luan is checking out research about Annalise Benton and her expeditions, and she meets a lookalike that seems to know a lot about Annalise. Let's read. Luan sat in a chair in the small library of the Alucard castle, reading one of Annalise Benton's new scrolled journals silently to herself, when she suddenly heard the chair beside her scrape softly. "Pardon me," said an unfamiliar woman's voice. "Can I look at that when you're done?" Luan turned and gasped, as the woman who spoke was equally beautiful, if not more than the princess. Sure," she told her in a low voice. "I'm almost finished with it anyway." But then Luan stared back at the new scroll photo of Annalise Benton, and then at the girl. With her dark brown eyes and the dark hair that tumbled past her shoulders, this girl would resemble a strikingly reasonable brunette version of Annalise Benton. But not Annalise leaned over to see the article Luan was reading, particularly noticing the photo. "Ah, I see what's going on," the other woman realized. "Yes, I do resemble Miss Benton very much, except for my hair." She fingered her long, straight, dark hair as she told the princess, "I'd give anything to be Annalise Benton. After all, she'd been lucky enough to publish those journals, but me," she sighed. I'm barely getting through paying a monster of a debt." "What kind of a debt?" Luan asked. "It's not for me. It's actually for my family," but not Annalise told her. "You see, my sister and I were once the hottest horse trainers in the local circus, but then we went bankrupt. I said we should never give up on our dreams. If we wanted the best, we needed to prove we wanted it." "Really?" Luan said. "But while my sister wanted adventure, I just wanted to settle down," said the Annalise doppelganger. "I worked any kind of job for extra money, a scientist golfer, an errand girl, or a costume designer. I even volunteered as a substitute teacher for a calligraphy class." Oh well. Okay," Luan said uneasily. I really should be getting out of here. This musty air is getting to me. Thanks for your time." "No problem," said the not Annalise as Luan rose from her seat and turned to leave. But then Luan stopped short and turned back toward the Annalise doppelganger, suddenly realizing the position of the girl's writing quill. "Hey, by the way, I never caught your name." The not Annalise turned toward her and said with a grin, "It's Erica." Erica Stone. So as you can see, there's a new character that's been introduced, and she seems to know a lot about Annalise Benton. But what is her connection? Well, I hope you enjoyed this excerpt reading. Have a happy Halloween. If you like these excerpt reading installments, like, comment, and share this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. So says the leader, signing off. Peace out. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.